this session, we had a recording problem in the beginning, so Michael Jiang started speaking without us recording everything properly. And he started talking about Confucius being a Chinese Bildung tradition, and that there was 500 years under which the Confucian tradition promoted a personal development, where he said that in your 40s you understand the world, or you don't live in confusion anymore, and then in your 50s you understand the world and you can handle the complexities of it. And that lasted for about 500 years. Then it was 1500 years of the Han Dynasty, and during those 1500 years there was a promotion of conformity according to the Confucian developmental philosophy. And then after that, things changed again. And so this is what Michael Jiang is talking about when we started the recording, or when the record is starting. So here he is. Enjoy.
As we all know, there has been huge government control on ideology, on speaking, on all aspects of the freedom in mainland China, and that has a huge impact on all the Bildung practice, all the education practice in China as well. That's the challenge number two. So that's two a strong culture of conformity and the strict government's control are the major challenge that any real educators have to face in mainland China. All right, so that's the first thing I want to share with you guys. And okay, still, even though it's so challenging, there are still efforts, and then there's still we can say flickering tiny lights in the darkness or in the strong wind, and there's still something that is hopeful. For example, so we can look, if you look at so when I traveled across China, and I met friends doing all kinds of Bildung. Sometimes all the efforts may not be exactly the Bildung we in a narrow way, but I think it's kind of Bildung as long as leads to self-discovery, leads to self-development, and leads to more common sense. So, for example, there are so many young people that form up groups doing meditation. There's many study groups. There are many book clubs in many cities, and so I think these are all sort of Bildung, and because the members, I personally joined a few of them, and the members of these clubs and the groups, apart from the book itself and apart from the yoga or meditation practice itself, and they also exchange ideas of the purpose of freedom, of the on the political side, there are pretty active exchange as well. So that made all these grassroots self-organizations a sense of Bildung organization. So that's on the Bildung side. So there are a big variety of forms of unrecognized, informal, grassroots organizations still active in China, especially among the middle age and the typically for people between 30 to 60 years old. These are the major audience or major users or major participants of such groups. The third thing I want to share is the grounded education. Grounded education, there are two sides. So there are many educators, individual educators like principals and teachers. They themselves are kind of enlightened, and they try to do, although they can't change the whole system, education system, they can't change the framework, they can't change the textbook, but in their classes, on their campus, they are trying to do something about waking up or keep alive the children's life, and uh, you know treat their students more equally than other education institutions. So we can call this in-system educators, or we can call them in-system reformers. So there are thousands of such enlightened principals and teachers, although their efforts are limited due to the system. Uh, then outside of the school system, we can see more of a bigger variety of practices. For example, there are quite a few. There are maybe, I believe it's between 20 to around 50, maybe around 50 to, they call it learning communities. So why they call that, they are actually schools, but why they call them learning community instead of school? Because they can't get the license to register a legal school in China. If they don't follow the teaching framework of the government, what the government defines, and they don't use the official book, yeah, textbook. And so, okay, so they call themselves learning communities, and because they can only call them this, so some of them even don't have a fixed campus. So basically they use many public spaces, like the coffee shop, like like a restaurant in the morning, and when the restaurant is not open for business, and that restaurant space could be their classroom. And some of them have good fixed small campus, not like the it's not like the Danish folk high school, with a beautiful big campus. It's a small it may be a few rooms in a apartment building, but it's fixed location, and those are the better off learning community. However, despite of the difficulty, and they are trying, I think that some of, I personally visited many of them, and many of them are really, really keep, they effectively keep the students live, and keep the students, they also, wake up the life of the students really were suffocated by the in-system education, and the parents, and basically the society. So they are many of their students, after half-year study or 1 year study, and they got energized again, and you can see them smile, like a normal kids, and then they learn, and they don't teach fixed knowledge. They don't have a textbook, just like the folk high school, but notice, they pay attention, much attention to the students effort, interest, and then they encourage their students to explore their own passion on any subject or topic, and then they will accompany the student to go further, use what they really enjoy, and what they have passion in as a doorway to self-education. So that's same as one of the target of the Danish folk high school, to do not teach the students knowledge, but teach them how to learn, and the students really learned how to learn. So that's pretty promising. Of course, they also encourage the students to live together and then work together on the project that or the topic that they are all interested in. They have a shared interest, and so then they have a discussion. They encourage discussion on life, on the issue, timely issues that is debatable, on the political viewpoints, on international relationships, on any topic that the students are interested in. So in that way, I think I have seen many of their students really become active citizens for the future. So having said all these good words about these learning opportunity communities, their number is so limited. I mean, throughout China, I believe, as I said, I believe there are around 50 of them, and each of them have around average. They have around 40 or 50 students. So that make only 2,000 students every year. At the same time in such a big country with such a huge population as China. So it's tiny effort, but they are still there. And any support that, and I also work with friends to see what support we can give them and to keep the seed or the flickering light of Bildung still shining. Okay, outside that's pretty much I want to share. And of course, besides this learning communities, there are also a small number of maybe a few dozen of private schools that are recognized by the government, and they can do a full scale groundway education like the learning communities. They can't do that because they are bigger and they are relatively bigger school, and they typically have students over 100 or maybe a few hundred. It's pretty big school, and they have to get recognized by the government. They have to follow a lot of regulations from the government. So what happened is that however, they can still practice the life education, the groundway education in some aspects on their campus. So we can call it a partial groundway education. And that's another part that is active in China. Overall, yeah, that's pretty much what we have. If we looking forward, currently China has its own challenge as a country, as a society. For example, the slowing economy. For the first time in the last 40 years, Chinese economy has slowing down in the last few years, and that bring up a new challenge for the Bildung practitioners or the educators in China. However, I think they also bring a big opportunity, because when the economy is growing fast and steadily fast, and everyone can see such big opportunity to make more money, and then the whole society's focus is on money making, on power and privilege. And today is different because the economy is slowing down, and then more people realize that it doesn't make sense to work like a dog, for day in and day out, without thinking who I am and do I really like this or not, and why I'm, what's the purpose of my life. I have seen so many more people every year, started to think inward, to look inward instead of just going after outward goals. So I think for this aspect, I think this is a good opportunity for China as well. So it's a challenge and it's also opportunity. I think that's what I want to share today. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Was really Thank you for sharing actually this experience that you had. And we are going to our next speaker, Hironobu Shindo from Japan. He is an associate professor of lifelong learning and cultural policy at the University of Tokyo Graduate School of Education and the visiting researcher at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. So now the stage is yours, Hironobu. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Can I share my presentation? Okay, thank you for your time. I'm Hironobu Shindo from the University of Tokyo, Japan. First of all, I would like to thank Line and all the organizers for giving me this opportunity. My field is educational studies, especially lifelong learning. Today, I would like to share some reflections under the title Decolonizing Bildung in Japan, Local Tradition and the Ethics of Cultural Pluralism. My talk will proceed in the following order. First, I will sketch a brief history of the reception of the concept of Bildung in Japan and how it acquired a Eurocentric character. Second, I will describe some recent positive changes that challenge this orientation, while also pointing to the simultaneous rise of exclusionary attitudes. Finally, I will suggest possible future directions from the perspective of lifelong learning. After the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century, Japan sought to introduce European civilization in politics, economy, and culture. Industrial development, the drafting of a constitution, the organization of a modern army, all of these demanded the rapid establishment of a modern education system. Among the models Japan turned to was Germany. The concept of Bildung, which is central to this conference, was also imported at that time. In Japan, Bildung was translated in two major ways. When the focus was on the accumulation of knowledge, it became kyoryo, cultivation of culture. And when the focus was on the process of personal growth, it became ningen keisei, formation of the human being, or shuyo toya, self-cultivation. It is important to note, however, that even before modernity, ideas of personal formation through education already existed in Japan. Influenced by Chinese classics, as Michael said, education combined reading with physical training, aiming for holistic development, especially for elite people. Of course, the content differed for samurai, merchants, and farmers, but I will not go into detail here. This picture shows ordinary children learning literacy in a community, but actually they're playing. The big change after modernization was that the ideal of society shifted to Europe and America. In the Taisho era, Bildung came to be modeled on reading the classic of Germany and Europe. The idea for the Japanese elite was to improve themselves through contact with the classics, inspired by figures like Winkelmann, German philosopher Winkelmann, who idealized ancient Greece, and Humboldt, who emphasized the holistic development of the individual. I think we can all agree that this reflects a very 19th century view of education. And this model also inevitably included an internalized Orientalist dimension, Japan as the East gazing with admiration at the West. In many ways, we are still under its influence. As you can see this picture of my university campus, it looks like very Greece building, but it's built in the 19th and 20th century. Yet in recent decades, we have begun to see new changes. Unlike earlier generations who looked down on their own traditions, some young people are now trying to take pride in local culture. My academic advisor, Katsuko Sato, has studied cases where young people engage in local traditions as a form of personal growth. At the same time, demographic decline makes cultural transmission increasingly difficult. Still, there are small groups of young people who live in rural areas and enjoy learning their regional culture. In urban areas too, children are now enjoying both Western and Japanese culture without rigid boundaries. In Chuo Ward, Tokyo, home to Ginza, Kabuki, the classical performing art in Japan, is not only performed by professionals, but also by local amateur citizens. Some children even told me in my interviews that they learned Kabuki performance by watching YouTube videos. When I myself was a child in the 1980s, I found local cultural activities quite boring, honestly, to be honest. I thought Western culture was much cooler, and I wanted to get home quickly to watch TV or play video games. But today's children seem more flexible, equally enjoying Japanese and Western cultures. This may signal a shift from a time when Bildung was thought to depend solely on Western ideals toward a more pluralistic orientation. I take this as a positive development. At the same time, however, there are some worrisome tendencies. The appreciation of one's own culture can also fuel exclusionary attitudes. Sorry to say, on social media, hate speech against foreigners is rising. And in politics, far-right parties that emphasize Japanese tradition are gaining ground. As Eric Hobsbawm reminded us, traditions are not fixed or natural. They are socially constructed or invented, often through exchanges with other cultures and shaped by historical and political contents. But some people really acknowledge this. And this is not just a Japanese problem. When I was in Germany last year and this year as a visiting researcher at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, I was deeply shocked to see far-right forces gaining ground there too, despite Germany's strong commitment to remembering and reflecting on the Nazi era. This leads me to the central question I'd like to share at this conference on Bildung. In a globalized and digitalized world, how can we cultivate respect for both our own culture and the cultures of others equally? I believe to answer this question, we need to decolonize the concept of Bildung. The era when people simply admired the West while undervaluing their own traditions is long past. But we must also avoid the opposite extreme, glorifying our own culture while despising others. What we need is an, I think, ethic of cultural pluralism, which means respecting and learning from multiple cultural traditions. Let me show some examples. The first is from Germany, the Mark Museum in Hamburg. This is a museum I really love. It was founded as a museum of ethnology that once served to legitimize colonialism in the 19th century. But it has since transformed its mission into celebrating and learning from diverse cultures worldwide. For example, they host events called community cooking, sharing Chinese food in the museum courtyard alongside the Chinese cultural exhibitions. Given Hamburg's large immigrant population, these events also foster intercultural exchange. And in Mark also, another example was the exhibitions Pipi's Father, which critically revisited the Orientalist stereotype of Pippi Longstocking's father becoming king of the southern island. And in the learning space of Mark, the slogan, "Decolonize yourself," is displayed prominently. I found this phrase crucial. We must examine the colonialist perspectives within ourselves and learn to respect our own and others' cultures equally. Significantly, the curator in charge of this program, this room, is an education specialist originally from Indonesia. My ideas on decolonization are directly inspired by her work. Of course, I have also drawn on many post-colonial thinkers such as Frantz Fanon and Edward Said. Therefore, my argument may not be particularly novel. Rather, I see it as a challenge that needs to be reiterated in educational contexts. The second example is from Japan. We have a community-based learning center called Kominkan, which was founded after the Second World War. There are over 10,000 centers across the country, run by local governments and residents, and serving as places where learning opportunities are provided and local events are held. This picture is one of them, Akishima City Kominkan. Akishima City is located in the western part of Tokyo, and I serve as a chairperson of a running committee of this center. And this center offers multicultural programs. It invites people from China, Myanmar, and Vietnam living in the city to give lectures, offering courses where participants can learn about the culture of their country while cooking. As a researcher of lifelong learning, I find such opportunities outside of formal schooling extremely important. They encourage us to question our own internalized colonialist perspectives and to recognize that people and cultures grow through exchange, not through opposition between us and them. To conclude, the history of Bildung in Japan has been shaped by Eurocentrism. Yet today, we see both promising transformations and dangerous regressions. Our task, I believe, is to foster an ethic of cultural pluralism, an orientation that resists both colonial subordination and exclusionary attitudes. Lifelong learning has a key role to play in this process. By creating opportunities for intercultural encounters in everyday life, we can cultivate the spirit of respecting diversity, both within ourselves and with others. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hironobu.
Welcome.
Now it's time for participants to have a little bit fun. And you're going to be sent in the breakout rooms. And there will be 3 questions for you to reflect on and discuss. I will send it in the chat as well.
We have 3 questions for you, and Zoom, I see I'm gonna say this for 8 times today because Zoom moved the buttons. So we have 3 questions for you that we would like for you to share in or discuss in the breakout room, which is here it is. What did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would be a good question to ask the speakers? And I've made some really wonderful breakout rooms for you. There are about 4 people in each room. So when you get there, please introduce yourselves briefly and then discuss what you heard, what you learned, and what would be a good question to ask the speakers. And we will keep the speakers in the main room because if they join one of the breakout rooms, they will probably just keep speaking, or people out there will expect them to keep speaking, and we don't want that to happen because we want you to talk to each other. So I'm now gonna open all the breakout rooms, and please join, and you will meet friendly people from around the globe. And we will see you in 20 minutes. So looking forward to hearing your questions and what you learned and what you got out of the presentations. And very, very interesting, Hironobu, also you, Michael, but Hironobu with the Japanese history there, because we really do not know what happened sort of on the ground. I mean, I would say, a pretty good history of the world education in primary school and some in high school, but these things that, hearing it from inside the cultures around the globe is just so fascinating because of course it's different.
Yeah, I learned too, and it's very interesting actually. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I said that it's very interesting when Hironobu mentioned the Meiji period era, the Meiji era, which is
Oh, yeah.
which is late 1900, basically 18 something, and then
Now I lost your
all
sound again, Michael. Oh, it's now back.
yeah, almost about same time. China also, maybe not about same time, like 20 years later, China also started to learn from,
Mhm.
follow the example of Germany.
Mhm.
Both Japan and China, took Germany as the number one example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess my guess is the fundamental reason is that they realized that the Germany way to get stronger as a country or a nation is the fastest. I mean, both Japan and China took Germany as the number one learning the number one model to follow in the late 1800s, because that's the fastest way to get stronger as a nation, as a country. Uh, and unfortunately, China has, the Chinese government kept many German consultants in the central government until the 1930s. For over 10 years. There's so many. They have many German consultants that consulting the president at the time on many issues, many matters, not just military, but other aspects as well. So I think that's part of the reason that the folk Bildung was not developed very well in Japan and China at that time. Because if I understand correctly, folk Bildung was not developed very well in Germany as well, right?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. That's one of the that's the major reason that the later Germany went to the the other end of the democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The black hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the question that you raise, Hironobu, about how do we find that balance between, embedding ourselves in our heritage and culture and loving it and caring about it and promoting it and, living it, and then not turning into xenophobic monsters. And I think that one path is definitely that the better you know your culture, the less vulnerable you feel. So you actually are more open to other cultures, the more you know about where you're coming from. But of course, you cannot tell your students that this is the only and the best culture, and that's why you need to know it, because we are the best people on the globe, and everybody else is, don't have culture. I mean, that's not how you can teach it. But I do think it's important that, for instance, in kindergarten and nurseries and so forth, that you hear the traditional stories of place. I mean, where you are, and I mean, what a disaster it would be if all of the globe had, I mean, the same Chinese food everywhere. We do that, but if that took over, and then McDonald's and Starbucks coffee, and there was like all these monopolies, that it's a different kind of uh yeah you know it's like cultural entropy if we don't have all these traditions from around the globe, and we discussed it in the previous session also with regards to Papua New Guinea and indigenous cultures in Australia, because um, we discussed the thing about, so if you come from the outside and want to join one of these cultures, whether it's just some of the rituals or live there, can you actually, can it become so much you, or you so much a part of it, that you become part of it? And that's the classical integration question. And I think there will always be, you will always carry with you what you grew up in. And when you arrive in another civilization, you can integrate a lot, but you can't become 100% like the people who grew up with it. Because, I mean, just look at Eastern and Western philosophy and culture. I could move to China. I know some stuff. I could participate in a lot of things, but my mindset, my understanding of yin and yang, and the energy chi concept in Chinese philosophy, that would never become part of my sort of cultural backbone and main frame of reference. There would also always be something there that would come before that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, appreciate as much as possible of the cultures where we, find ourselves. But it's a really interesting question. How much of a culture that you didn't grow up with can you actually integrate into yourself and feel this is me, and also see the nuances. Now we have Pindar here in this tiny East Asian summit. So I think the three of you just I don't know if you've met before, but please say hello to each other, because you are now part of the global meeting on Equinox inner circle of speakers.
Hello.
So Pindar,
So,
I mean, you haven't spoken, so please say a few words about yourself.
oh yeah, just a troublemaker from Hong Kong. Um, I like the phrase "embrace the heretic." And one of my questions, we talked about education. I'm sorry I had to drop off. I'm actually quite time poor. The difference between education and indoctrination. I think that's something which sometimes indoctrination is master's education, and that's one thing that I've noted in looking at how the internet was deployed. And although I apologize to Hironobu because I missed his talk, but one of my heroes is a gentleman called Jun Murai, who actually sort of brought the internet to Japan, just as I helped with the internet in Hong Kong in the early 90s. And we have society on board, a billion people or a few hundred million, and so as you know, it's quite difficult to pivot uh, uh, the nominal amount of people that belong to a certain culture. June managed to pivot the internet in Japan. It wasn't clear at that point in time that the internet would be anything other than sort of like a interesting research topic, but he managed to pivot Japan. And once he was on the outside, he wasn't in the inner group. He was on the edge. And there's a phrase in sort of the internet sphere, which is the edge becomes the center. In other words, when things are clear, when all the innovation's on the edge, basically, all the people who you never heard about, the troublemakers, the heretics. And I think there was a time that June was like that. And he managed to pivot. The other person who, at the same time, the example here is Bill Gates. He pivoted Microsoft and said, the internet is going to be a big deal. Let's pivot the whole of Microsoft. And I see all these challenges washing up on our shores, and I'm concerned that sort of linear thinking in an exponential world doesn't work, and that's why these Equinox meetings are particularly important. I
So how
follow
do we pivot this into the, center and make a Bildung world?
Well, it's our personal relationships. And I think we now know through uh, what's it called, Meta or Facebook, that we're all sort of not 7 hops away, but maybe 6.5. And so, if we all have 150 friends and they have 150 friends, the network of relationships, which keeps me optimistic, because again, how do we get this exponential thinking? Is how do we know that we have a core idea that has legs? And then ripple it out. And so what's different now is, using the internet to pivot society on a global basis. And that comes with good and bad, right? So we have the internet as the amplifier, all these fuzzy notions that everyone has a microphone, so who's actually listening when everyone's speaking. And so this group is particularly interesting to me because obviously I live in the region and there's a map of the world, like most of the people within this circle here is half the population of the world. And why the reason why I'm optimistic is the challenge that I see with this the current bubble in artificial intelligence, right? The irony of this yin yang thing you mentioned is that where's the good governance with artificial general intelligence? And the irony, I think, is China will invent it. Um, China already has deployed open source AI. But as we also know, we have a one-party system. Nothing will change that party. So the most interesting thing will be the introduction of governance or governance modules inside of these artificial general intelligence. So, I mean, here's the question I wanted to ask for Michael, because obviously his background and Hironobu will also have a view, is how can we work together? Because again, we have society on board. And so one thing I have learned over the years is, we have a worldview of nations, right? An international between nation actors. And then we have this global thing, which is the internet, which doesn't involve nations or wasn't built by nations specifically. Bitcoin, another example of cryptocurrency. But then again, there's the notion that it's a social construct. Money is a social construct. We are the ones to define what we will accept for our labor. And El Salvador was mentioned in the previous case, in the previous session, as they are forced to explore and innovate on the edge because obviously they had a very low base from which to begin. So, my perspective, whatever I can share is, embrace the heretic. Question is which heretic? But just be mindful that there are heretics out there, and it won't necessarily come from mainstream research labs or the traditional centers of innovation. They may come in all different shapes and forms. And so, how you can be mindful of that. I'm interested in gifted education. And, as I think Einstein once said, we can't solve the problems of today with the thinking of yesterday, right? So it's all the same thinking that created the problem in the first place. So I'm here to learn. I'm here to actually not talk, and I'll be very interested in other views of other participants. Thank you very much.
Very, very happy to have you here. We're very happy to have everybody here. But I mean, there is a thing about. I mean, part of the reason why we're doing this is exactly because of those major changes that are brought forth by the technological development. Because we were all brought up in some shape or form within the nation state and referring to that. And now we need to understand the globe and we need to interact with people from around the globe. So we thought, hey, let's actually do that. But we got 8 billion people who need to care about their local community and families, their country and the rule of law and political structures and democracy and all that stuff at that level. And then we got the globe that is digitizing and becoming a completely different kind of structure, and where I definitely hope that we have the wisdom, the Bildung, and the education to do that well for everybody. Doesn't seem to be the case. We need to do something about that, and that is where we are as a species. So part of why we're initiating these conversations and inviting everybody to join is to have a global conversation about the times that we're in. And right now it's about Bildung and beyond conformity, and we have all this conformity from our countries and our sort of the civilizations that we grew up in, and now we need to see the fuller, bigger picture as a species. And on that note, I see that people have returned from the breakout room, so let's hear what they've come up with.
Welcome back all. I hope you had a great time. And please share your questions to the speakers in the chat. You can also turn on microphone and ask the question, of course.
I just shared two questions which came up in the conversation that Anne and Yuli had, reflecting on what we heard from Michael and Hironobu.
Yeah, the question is there a global identity, and where does Bildung sit in between the global and local? This is the first one. And the second one, what can we contribute to the global? What difference makes a difference? It's really great. So who wanna jump in? Yes.
I'll bite. I'll bite. Is there a global identity, and where does Bildung sit, or sit in between the global and the local? Huh. I don't think there is a global identity, and even if there was, I wouldn't want it. And the reason for that is sort of like a piece of string that has two ends, or like a magnet that has two ends. It's actually the relationship between the ends that I'm actually interested in. So the difference to me is actually what makes us interesting as a species. And it's this relationship that actually makes us human. I think I tried to allude to that in an earlier Equinox session. What can we contribute to the global? What difference makes a difference? I would say the internal weather. I think Michael mentioned meditation actually in his intervention earlier as one of the things that he did as one of these clubs. And I think the biggest difference is how we internally choose to react to the stimulus around us. Why? Because that's probably about the only thing that we can control, notwithstanding that we probably perhaps create this whole illusion in front of us. And so the contribution is a contribution to yourself and how you manage your internal state, your internal outrage, I guess. It's difficult not to read the newspapers these days and not be outraged at all these at the governance around us. At least I feel that way. And in terms of trying to manage my own reactions and trying to be hopeful, hope dies last. But if we can be hopeful and if we take actions towards your own values and speak your own truth, that's, I think, that's all that needs to be done. And I think it's probably a very humble starting point, but I believe it's a realistic one. And so look at your own internal weather, your own internal state, and how you react to the stimulus around you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pinda. I totally agree with what you said, and for me, I don't like global identity as well, because I believe that the way we are here on this planet is because we are special, and not just as an individual, but also as a nation, or as a different all the different group of people or species of people, and then otherwise the world is boring, right? If you think about the AI, the coming AI future, and if human beings are replaced by the AI beings or AI man, and that's a boring world. So that's why I don't like it, and that also leads to what we can do. The way I think Bildung's position is not in between the global identity and the national identity, is that everyone has a everyone is deep rooted in their own culture and their own heritage and who they are. And what Bildung can do is that Bildung can get us look beyond and get us kind of surpass who we are as a nation or as a people, and then Bildung can bring us see others, and then appreciate the difference, appreciate the variety, the colorfulness, and that's what Bildung can do in this aspect. So I would think that what we can do is that, as I really like what Lena just said in the main room. She said the best thing you can do to bridge the difference and to promote diversity is know your own culture more and better. So I think that's important. So when you know your own culture more and better, and you know better and more who you are, and then you are more deeply rooted, and then that gives you confidence to outreach, to keep open, to dare to allow the difference, and then dare to appreciate. That's just my take. Thank you.
I would like to refer back to something that was said in the previous session when we were back in Oceania 2 hours ago, and it may have been August who brought it up, but it was about what happens when you participate in a ritual, when you sing and dance together, and you really immerse yourself in it and sort of let go, because I mean, at first you become one with the group, but if you carry on long enough, you become one with the universe. And so on the one hand, there's me here and now in this physical form at the office in front of Zoom. And then there is my physical being and being part of the species, humans, and being part of life itself, because there's DNA in every cell of my body, and I breathe the air that comes from the plants and all that stuff. So in that respect, I can identify with that whole sort of the totality of life forms, because I'm part of it. I can't take myself out of it. I wouldn't be here without it. And that's kind of an intellectual realization. I can reflect on this, but then I could enter this ritual, and then it was almost like internally I would get into some kind of depth that I cannot reach with the intellect and with my words, and where I would just sort of dissolve into it. And then I could wake up again, or stop dancing and chanting and come out of it again and realize that I'm part of this world. So I think part of the modern project is to isolate us from this nature, which has produced one kind of really good results. One of them being that we can meet on Zoom and have this kind of meeting. We wouldn't have been able to do that without the science that also included separating ourselves from nature. And now we are at a point in time where a lot of people are realizing we lost something on the way, because there is something inside us, among us, between us, and in our relationship to nature that we lost. And when we don't have that, we are literally not just killing each other, but the planet as a whole. And somebody wrote on a social medium that I saw a couple of days ago, which really summed it up, because when you realize that in the current system, a forest has no value until you cut it down and sell it as timber, then you understand why we're in the mess that we're in, because we've simply created a system that doesn't, value what it means to be human, what it means to be nature and be part of that nature. And so that is also a part of why we're doing this. And I think it's amazing to sit here with people from literally around the globe and have this very sort of human conversation on equal terms. So thank you for joining. But it really is amazing to have these conversations, and that's why we keep doing it.
May I also add something? Can you hear me? Yani there is an old idea about this
You're cutting up. Can you maybe turn off the camera?
Identity, a way to reach to. Yes. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes. there is also a logical, intellectual way to reach this interconnected being that we call humans. And if you want to give it a name, in antique Greece it was called cosmopolitans, because these were the citizens of the globe as a cosmic being, as a cosmic where we belong, and they used quadrivium called mathematics, geometry, music, and astronomy to learn logically, not only by rituals, but also with the help of these sciences, to become a cosmopolitan, to become a part of this universe. And they called, when you begin to learn about these sciences, and when you begin to understand that you are a part of this, you begin to become cosmopolitan, and then you love so much to be a cosmopolitan, to learn about yourself, that this is called the love of learning, the love of knowledge, called philosophy. Philosophia, the love of. So maybe cosmopolitans. So maybe we can search for commonalities between cultures, which is about being a human. Let's say in Bildung, this question find its meaning now here. What is to be human? So we have virtues as commonalities in every culture. For example, if we treat any children in the street behind the eyes, or any woman in the street behind the eyes badly, I think any culture around the world will react on this. So being honest, being truthful, these virtues are commonalities, and this can give us a cosmopolitan identity, which is a totally different way of today's modern identity, which people find their own identity with the brands they use, Is it iPhone or Samsung or Macintosh or Windows, or which car you have, which clothes you have. This is discriminating individuals from the society, making individuals as an identity with the brands, and they making consumer society. So maybe we can try it with this kind of meetings and trials. We can find commonalities to become cosmopolitans more and more, because the reality, as we see now, I will make it shorter, may talk too much enough. Reality, we see that the borders are virtual, the countries are virtually constructed, and we are living in the same land, we are breathing the same air, we have neighbors. Greece, we are swimming in the same sea, we are eating the same fish, we are breathing the same air, we are eating the same herbs around the sea. So we are living the borders of the countries are a little bit virtual. So maybe this can stay, nation states can stay to stabilize, to guarantee the peace in such a part of the world, but people may transcend this national identity on their own individuality to become more and more cosmopolitan, and to share, to contribute to the global society, and find their own identity on contribution. Because
I think we should. I
Okay.
think we got the point now, August. So I think we
Okay.
should let the speakers reply to that.
Yeah, I would like to ask Mr. Michael only a little question. You were talking about this Confucius teaching and the continuous. How did they continue to teach this tradition as single teachers? Do they have a relationship with the agriculture or something like this, or any nature in their teaching, or it's just about society? I would like to learn also about. Is there any sources that we can find them in the internet to learn about more about the teachers, the free schools, not registered schools, but all the other ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. The question. So the way they are teaching what I would call the education reformers, the Chinese education reformers, the way they are teaching, they do have they share a common emphasis on nature, on not agriculture but nature. Yeah, they share a common emphasis on getting the Chinese kids out of classroom, out of their off their screens, and then back to the outdoor, to the nature, and then do some like tree climbing, um, do some camping, jogging, and engage in some sports like frisbee are very popular. It's relatively easier to do in the cities, but still this gives some the kids a lot of outdoor fun. Yeah, they do share the emphasis on getting getting the students back to the nature. And as for their materials online, I'm not sure if they have anything in English. Most I think all their official websites per se is not really websites. It's in China everyone use a super powerful app called WeChat, so it's in WeChat. Yeah. So all their websites actually are WeChat website, which cannot be, it's not easy to view outside of WeChat. And I will say, I will take a look. I will search something, and then I will try. I will try to find something. If I find something that it's easier to reach by English readers, I will send to Lenny, and she can share to everyone.
And And speaking about sharing, so normally we have a website ready for the next event. We haven't created that yet. So I will send out an email to everybody who is participating or signed up for the day, and we will share the links from all of the sessions. And if you send me anything, I will include that in that email. We also have
Okay,
in the
great.
chat a little survey where we're asking about the most important contributions from East Asia. It's still open. So if you would like to go there and just one final, those of you who haven't been there, and share what you think is the most significant contribution from East Asia, this is your last chance, and then we will show it towards the end of the session. Do you have any other questions or comments for the speakers? And you can raise your hand so we can see who would like to speak. Catherine, please.
I can't get everything up. We talked about decolonialization, and one of our questions was, how do we decolonialize ourselves? I can just leave it like that for now in our group.
Pindar is saying unshackle your mind. It's kind of like an idea, but it's a big, what I can say, it's a big question. It's really a big question what like we are also thinking about as Ukrainians now. And we are working on ongoing, let's say.
Yeah.
If I may suggest something, I mean, expose yourself to as much of your own and other cultures as you can. Because I mean, there's the colonizer and the colonized, and generally it's very easy to say who's who, but it may also sort of shift in the process. And where if you're one of the colonized people, definitely focus on your own culture so that you know what has been there and what it is they're trying to get rid of. The colonizers are trying to get rid of. If you're a colonizer or have a colonizing heritage, I'm guilty as charged. Meet as much as of rest of the world as you can and hear those perspectives, because that's where I have my views challenged, and also discover the vast richness that somebody deprived me of during the formal education that I had, because they were so occupied with giving me the right version of my own heritage, or the richness of my own heritage. So um and as Fichte said, Bildung comes from pushbacks, Anstoß, resistance. So when you meet the world with an assumption and you suddenly have to realize that was wrong. All the people I trusted told me all this stuff as truth, and now I face these people they were talking about, and it was not the truth. And the people who are, out there, who live their lives in a certain way, they must, after all, be, know what they're doing and know it better than my teachers did. So maybe I should pay more attention to them. And that's a process, and it can be painful. And yeah, so we're all in this together. It is a process,
Mm,
and I think we should
yep.
just be open to the fact that we may not have learned the full picture from the beginning, and there's always more to learn.
Yes, Sebastian, do you have a question?
I just wanted to share with you what I just shared in the chat, because I was reading from a book from lectures from Heinz von Förster, and there's actually one story that he shared from a friend, that the problem is not understanding, the problem is understanding. And really, it's when you mention Fichte, I can mention Rilke and living the question. It's kind of amazing on a general term, being German and seeing, I now say education in my country, and having so many references, even the all-embracing term of Bildung, taking the state of Bildung in my country. I just wanted to point your attention to that little story, because I find it absolutely timely in our current context. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. Do we have any more questions? If not, I want to thank you to the speakers, and I want to also say that if you want to join Global Bildung Network, you can join. Like not anytime soon, but you can participate actually to the network. You can be a host, or you can be a speaker, you can be ambassador of the Global Bildung Network, and this is actually what we are talking about here, that how we can communicate, how we can collaborate, how we can share, because it's always kind of something in between individual and collective, between two individuals, between two collectives, and there's some space that we can also use to create something good, to create a space for others, and also work on decolonizing ourselves, or work from the other part of de-imperializing ourselves. We'll see.
So we have a result of the survey on the most important things coming out of, or significant things coming out of East Asia, and I'm just gonna share the slide because this is very exciting. Of course, everybody has been, wondering what might the answer be. So let's see what we have come up with. So spaghetti is not a winner. And the Walkman is not a winner, and neither is fireworks. But paper money and sushi are fighting over what would be the most significant contribution from East Asia. And so if you have not voted and you think you would like to sort of, influence the result, you still have a couple of more minutes before we end the session. So I'm just saying, we got a fierce fight here between China and Japan regarding paper money and sushi. So let's see if there are any changes coming up. And then we have the world map. As you can tell, we are now literally across the globe. We have Africa in here. We got North America. We got Europe and East Asia, and very close to the Middle East, and we'll get there. And then we also have the Blue Pacific, as it will be called hereafter, thanks to our speakers in the previous session. So there is my mouse. So we are know a lot more about East Asia, and thank you so much for joining. I would like to ask our speakers if they have some final remark before we close the Zoom room and travel on to Asia. Michael, you
Thanks, Lina. I just want to thank everyone for having me here, and I think the activity, the events like this is exactly how what we can do, and to open ourselves, and then to dare to reach out, and then I think that the world can be better with more Bildung. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
And thank you from me. Thank you for everyone for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed the discussion with you all. Especially, I was interested in the concept of global identity, which means what connects us all together. It's a very big question, but it's a really interesting and exciting question. I'd like to continue thinking. So thank you for everything.
Thank you for our speakers, and see you in 20 minutes on our next station, Asia.